In the dead of night, my best friend Jen Blake burst into the emergency staff room in tears. She grabbed my white coat, her voice shaking. "Audrey," she cried, her voice quivering. "The old woman out front has completely lost her mind. She dragged a whole bunch of relatives from the countryside with her. She smashed one of the medical trays and has been screaming at everyone ever since. I'm scared. We're already short-staffed tonight. Can you go restrain her for me?" I looked at her, without saying a word. Slowly, I pulled open my desk drawer. Inside lay a pair of worn fingerless sparring gloves, equipment I'd used countless times in martial arts competitions. Out of habit, I picked them up and carefully wiped them down with antiseptic, preparing for what would normally be a quick and efficient knockout. Then, a series of glowing lines suddenly floated across my vision. They hovered in the air like transparent subtitles that only I could see. LMAO. The villainess has no clue the old lady's son is a tech billionaire. Those country relatives are actually elite bodyguards in plain clothes. In her last life, she rushed over and knocked the old woman unconscious. Bennett Shaw destroyed her career, got her medical license revoked, then buried her in lawsuits until she went bankrupt. Absolutely satisfying. The old woman wasn't violent at all. She was suffering from severe hypoglycemia. She accidentally knocked over the tray because her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Our heroine Jen already knows Bennett Shaw is searching for a doctor who can fight. Audrey is the biggest obstacle, so she's getting rid of the competition before he ever notices her. I stared at the glowing comments in silence. Then, without another thought, I carefully folded the gloves and placed them back inside the drawer. The corners of my lips lifted into a faint smile. "Wait here," I said calmly. "I'll be right back." So this was it. At the healthiest, strongest point of my life, the person I needed to protect most wasn't a patient. It was myself. Behind me, Jen hurried after me, clutching the hem of my coat again. "Audrey," she whispered, unable to hide the excitement buried beneath her fake concern, "don't go easy on her. That old lady is completely insane. Just knock her out and end this." I didn't even look at her. Instead, I pushed the sparring gloves farther into the drawer until they disappeared from sight. Jen blinked. "You're not wearing them?" For a split second, panic flickered across her face before she forced herself to smile. "To deal with one elderly woman?" I replied casually. "I won't need them." Instead, I opened the medicine cabinet and grabbed 2 tubes of highly concentrated oral glucose. After slipping them into my coat pocket, I closed the cabinet with a quiet click. The floating comments exploded. "Ha ha ha. She isn't even bringing gloves anymore. Is she planning to beat the old lady barehanded? Jen's borrowed knife strategy is genius. Once the old woman gets hurt, Audrey's entire life is finished. I can't wait to see Bennett Shaw's bodyguards slam her into the ground." Ignoring every glowing word, I stepped out of the staff room. The emergency lobby looked like a battlefield. A crowd had gathered around a stretcher. Several broad-shouldered men dressed in black suits formed a protective circle, their expressions tense with helpless frustration. In the center lay an elderly woman with silver hair. She clutched her chest tightly as beads of cold sweat rolled down her pale face. Her breathing came in short, uneven bursts. One trembling hand refused to stay still. Without warning, her arm jerked violently. Crash! A stainless steel medical tray flew onto the floor. Forceps, gauze, syringes, and surgical instruments scattered across the polished tiles, the sharp clatter echoing throughout the lobby. "Stay away," the old woman shouted weakly, her voice strained with irritation. "All of you, get away from me." One of the men in black spun toward the reception desk, his eyes bloodshot with panic. "Where are the doctors?" he roared. "Is everyone in this hospital asleep?" Behind me, Jen suddenly shoved me forward. "Audrey, go," she urged loudly. "That guy in black is threatening us. Put him in an arm lock if you have to." Her words sounded righteous enough, but the slight tremble in her voice betrayed something else. Excitement. The push carried me a couple of steps closer. As I looked at the old woman's pale lips, trembling fingertips, and the cold sweat soaking through her clothes, the diagnosis became obvious almost instantly. Classic severe hypoglycemia. The rapid heartbeat, the shaking, the irritability, the confusion, every symptom matched perfectly. "Sir," I said evenly, "please calm down." I walked straight toward the stretcher. The largest bodyguard immediately stepped in front of me. His towering frame completely blocked my path. His expression hardened. "Who are you?" he demanded. "Don't touch Mrs. Shaw." Without changing my expression, I moved. My left hand caught his wrist with practiced precision. A slight twist. A controlled shift of weight. My thumb pressed directly against a pressure point while redirecting his momentum instead of fighting it. The entire motion was clean, efficient, and almost effortless. The nearly 200-pound bodyguard lost his balance immediately. His knee slammed against the floor with a dull thud. The barrage of floating comments nearly covered my vision. Holy crap, that move was actually kind of hot.
Hot?
She just laid hands on Bennett Shaw's bodyguard. She's finished. The remaining bodyguards instantly surrounded me. The atmosphere tightened. Every muscle in the room seemed ready to explode. I ignored every one of them. My attention never left the elderly woman. With my free hand, I gently supported her jaw while pressing firmly against the pressure point between her thumb and index finger. She cried out softly. The tension in her jaw loosened just enough. Without wasting another second, I bit open both glucose tubes and carefully squeezed the thick liquid into her mouth. Swallow, I instructed, my voice calm, steady, and unquestionable. The nearest bodyguard lunged forward. What the hell do you think you're doing? The bodyguard I had forced to one knee recovered almost instantly. With a grunt, he wrenched his arm free and swung a heavy punch straight at my face. The rush of air brushed against my ear. His fist stopped less than an inch from my nose. Stop. The weak but commanding voice froze everyone in place. Aaron, don't. The old woman drew a shaky breath. The confusion clouding her eyes slowly faded, replaced by growing awareness. Though she was still pale, the violent trembling had begun to subside. Aaron stood motionless, his fist suspended in midair. Ma'am. His eyes widened with relief. You're feeling better? She nodded weakly, taking another slow breath. Color gradually returned to her cheeks. Looking at me, she offered a grateful smile. The sugar. She whispered. Thank you, young doctor. I withdrew my hand and calmly straightened the wrinkles in my white coat. Severe hypoglycemia often causes confusion, irritability, and aggressive behavior. I explained. From now on, keep glucose tablets or candy with Mrs. Shaw whenever she goes out. If symptoms appear again, give her sugar immediately before they worsen. Aaron let out a long breath he had apparently been holding. He wiped the sweat from his forehead, then bowed slightly. Thank you, doctor. Thank you. We almost misunderstood you. The invisible weight hanging over the emergency lobby disappeared. Bodyguards who had been prepared for a fight finally relaxed. Nurses quietly resumed moving equipment. Even the anxious whispers among waiting patients slowly died down. Only one person looked as though the world had collapsed. Several yards away, Jen stood frozen. Her face had turned deathly pale. Disbelief, resentment, and panic chased one another across her features as she stared at the recovered old woman. The floating comments erupted once again. Wait, what just happened? The villainess didn't punch anyone. Of course she knows medicine. She's literally an ER doctor. The script wasn't supposed to go this way. Jen's setup completely failed. She's probably panicking inside. I smiled warmly at Jen. Jen, I called. The danger's over. Why are you still hiding back there? She stiffened. For a brief moment, her expression twisted with frustration. Then, almost instantly, it transformed into fear. She hurried toward us. Or rather, she pretended to.
Ah.
With an exaggerated cry, her foot slipped. She threw herself sideways with impeccable timing.
Bang.
Her body slammed into the brand-new imported defibrillator that had just been wheeled beside Mrs. Shaw's stretcher. The machine tipped over. Crack. Its large display struck the floor first, splintering into a web of shattered glass. The entire lobby fell silent. Jen collapsed dramatically beside it, clutching her ankle as tears instantly flooded her eyes. She pointed a trembling finger at me. Audrey Vale, she sobbed. How could you feed medicine to a patient without permission? I only wanted to stop you until the attending physician arrived. Why? Why did you push me? The accusation echoed through the corridor. Every pair of eyes shifted toward me. Rapid footsteps approached from the far end of the hallway. Head nurse Wendy Collins hurried over with several security guards close behind. The instant Jen saw her, she burst into louder sobs. She crawled across the floor and wrapped both arms around Wendy's leg. Head nurse Collins, she cried. Please help. Audrey attacked the patient's family, then smashed the department's new defibrillator because it was blocking her way. Silence swallowed the lobby. Only Jen's heartbreaking cries echoed through the emergency department. Wendy lowered her eyes toward the shattered machine before looking at me. Her face darkened immediately. Audrey Vale. Her sharp voice sliced through the room. What exactly happened here? She pointed directly at me. I remained where I stood, watching the performance unfold with surprising calm. You can ask the patient's family, I replied evenly. They saw everything. I turned toward Aaron. Before he could open his mouth, Jen interrupted. She almost attacked this gentleman. Jen cried between sobs. I ran over because I wanted to stop her. She tightened her grip on Wendy's uniform. Head nurse. Audrey has been under tremendous pressure because of the Excellence Award competition. She's been emotionally unstable lately. I tried to calm her down, but she lost control and destroyed the equipment. She looked toward the broken defibrillator with exaggerated sorrow. That machine was the department's biggest purchase this year. The moment Wendy heard the words Excellence Award, something flashed across her eyes. Disgust. Everyone in the emergency department knew the Outstanding Young Physician Award would go to either Jen or me. The difference was that every performance evaluation, every examination, every successful case, and every research project placed me far ahead of her. The floating comments drifted lazily across my vision. Jen deserves an acting award instead. Perfect reversal. Now Audrey looks like the unstable one. Too bad for Audrey. Wendy is Jen's distant aunt. This match was fixed from the start. As I looked at Wendy's unmistakably biased expression, an old memory surfaced. 3 years earlier, my very first day in the emergency department. I had barely learned the workflow before an unreasonable patient screamed at me for nearly 30 minutes. I had stood there, embarrassed and overwhelmed, while everyone pretended not to notice. Then Jen walked over. She handed me a warm cup of milk tea. Stepping between me and the patient, she smiled brightly. Don't mind them, she had whispered. From today onward, we're sisters. I've got your back. Her smile had seemed so genuine, so warm. If only it had stayed that way. Instead, jealousy and ambition had hollowed it out until nothing remained except calculation. This nurse is lying. Aaron finally stepped forward. He planted himself firmly between me and Wendy. Pointing directly at Jen, he shouted, Dr. Vale saved Mrs. Shaw's life. This woman tripped on her own and knocked over the machine. How can you blame the doctor? Jen immediately shrank behind Wendy, making herself appear even smaller and more pitiful. Sir, she whispered tearfully, I know you're afraid Audrey will retaliate. She lowered her head dramatically. She won a state martial arts championship. Even strong men like you are scared of her. I understand why you're defending her. In only a few sentences, she transformed Aaron's testimony into supposed evidence that he had been intimidated. Wendy raised a hand impatiently. Enough. She didn't even let Aaron finish. This is an internal hospital matter. It doesn't concern you. Then she turned toward me. Her expression was colder than ice. Audrey Vale, you will personally compensate the hospital for the $600,000 defibrillator. Furthermore, due to your unacceptable conduct tonight, I will report this incident to medical affairs. You are suspended immediately, pending investigation, and tomorrow's Excellence Award ceremony. Her lips curled slightly. You needn't attend. A flawless combination. With a few sentences, she stripped away my career, my reputation, and placed an enormous debt on my shoulders. I didn't defend myself. There was no point. I simply looked at Wendy. Then at the satisfied smile Jen struggled to hide behind her. Some people had already decided what they wanted to believe. No explanation could wake someone pretending to sleep. And a referee who had already chosen a winner never needed evidence. Without a word, I removed my white coat. Carefully folding it, I draped it over the chair beside the nurse's station. Very well, I said quietly. I accept the punishment. The moment the words left my mouth, delight flashed across Jen's eyes. The floating comments immediately celebrated. What a pushover. She's just accepting everything? Jen steals the award, gets rid of her rival, dumps the blame on her, and Audrey still doesn't fight back. Ignoring every mocking remark, I turned toward the locker room. Behind me, hurried footsteps approached. Audrey. Jen caught up with me and gently grabbed my sleeve. Please don't blame Head Nurse Collins, she said softly. She's only thinking about the department. She leaned closer until only I could hear her. You can't possibly afford $600,000, can you? There it was. The real reason she'd followed me. As long as you let me use your cardiovascular emergency pathway research, she whispered sweetly, and list me as the first author, I'll pay the compensation for you. I looked quietly into her smiling face. That project represented countless sleepless nights. 5 years of emergency case records. Thousands of patient files analyzed one by one. Months spent building a complete database from scratch. Once published, it would transform emergency cardiovascular treatment protocols. She didn't just want my future. She wanted the years of my life I had poured into creating it. I held her gaze for several long seconds. Then I smiled. Jen, you're really thoughtful. Looking straight into her eyes, I pronounced each word slowly. Fine. You can come copy the files from my computer tomorrow morning. For the first time, genuine surprise crossed her face. She clearly hadn't expected me to agree so easily. A second later, excitement bloomed into a radiant smile. I knew it, she laughed happily. We'll always be best friends. The next morning, golden sunlight filtered through the blinds, painting long stripes across the quiet emergency office. The only sound was the steady clicking of a computer mouse. I stood silently beside my workstation. Jen sat comfortably in my chair, as though it already belonged to her. Unlike her usual appearance, today she wore flawless makeup. An expensive perfume lingered in the air around her. Even her white coat had been freshly pressed until every crease had disappeared. Unable to hide her excitement, she inserted a polished silver flash drive into my computer. She quickly located the encrypted folder. Cardio-neuro emergency core pathway. Her eyes sparkled. The progress bar slowly began moving. 30%. 50%. Without taking her eyes off the screen, she sighed dramatically. Audrey, you're smart enough to understand how this world works. In medicine, talent alone isn't enough. People without connections never make it very far. She smiled confidently. You give me your research. I win the Excellence Award. And when I become deputy director someday, she glanced at me generously. I promise I won't forget you. She spoke as though she were offering charity instead of theft. I leaned casually against the filing cabinet, watching the screen with calm, icy eyes. Really? Then let me congratulate you in advance. Dr. Blake. The floating comments danced beside the monitor. Audrey is unbelievably easy to manipulate. Once Jen gets this research, she'll become the medical consultant for Bennett Shaw's medical technology company. $1 million salary waiting. Audrey's sacrificed years of sleep building this project, and now she's handing it over herself. That's destiny. My gaze remained fixed on the progress bar. It finally reached 100%. A cheerful chime echoed from the computer's speaker. The transfer was complete. Jen quickly pulled the silver flash drive from the port and clutched it to her chest like a precious jewel. She practically bounced out of my chair, her heels clicking sharply against the linoleum. Thank you, Audrey. Don't worry, I'll tell my aunt to make sure your suspension paperwork goes smoothly. Take a nice, long vacation. She swept out of the room, leaving behind a heavy trail of her expensive perfume. The moment the door clicked shut, the transparent subtitles floating in my vision absolutely lost their minds. LMAO, is Audrey actually an NPC? She just gave away her life's work. Jen is officially set for life. She's going straight to the Excellence Award ceremony, and then she'll lock down the partnership with Bennett Shaw. Audrey is the biggest clown in medical history. I let out a soft laugh, sitting down in the chair Jen had just vacated. I pulled up the system log on my monitor. Yes, the file was named cardio_neuro_emergency_core_pathway_final, DB. And yes, it was filled with thousands of rows of data. But what Jen didn't know, because she had never spent a single night doing actual research, was that medical databases require an active, cloud-hosted validation key to run statistical models. Without my personal, encrypted clearance token, the entire database was just a mountain of corrupted, nonsensical code wrapped in a pretty user interface. Even better? The moment that specific flash drive was inserted into an external network, a hidden background script I had written months ago would automatically trigger a system-wide audit report, detailing exactly which user account copied the proprietary hospital data. I leaned back, checking my watch. The Excellence Award ceremony was starting in exactly 1 hour. Let's see how long your destiny lasts, Jen, I whispered. The grand auditorium of the municipal hospital was packed. Banners for the Outstanding Young Physician Award hung from the high ceilings, and the front rows were filled with the hospital's board of directors, medical elites, and prominent local investors. Among them sat Bennett Shaw. Even from the back of the auditorium where I stood in my civilian clothes, his presence was undeniable. Clad in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, he exuded the cold, sharp aura of a tech billionaire who built an empire on efficiency and data. Next to him sat his mother, Mrs. Shaw, looking fully recovered, though her eyes were scanning the room, seemingly searching for someone. On stage, head nurse Wendy Collins took the microphone, her face glowing with pride. This year, the selection committee has witnessed an extraordinary breakthrough, Wendy announced, her voice echoing through the speakers. A young physician who has not only shown exemplary dedication on the front lines, but has single-handedly developed a revolutionary protocol, the Cardio-Neuro-Emergency Core Pathway. The screen behind her lit up with Jen's name and a beautifully designed title slide. The crowd erupted into applause. Jen stepped onto the stage, wearing a brilliant smile. She accepted the heavy glass trophy, holding it up as camera flashes illuminated her face. "Thank you so much," Jen said into the microphone, wiping away a theatrical tear. "This project represents 5 years of my life. Countless sleepless nights, analyzing thousands of patient files from scratch. I did it all to ensure that no patient in our emergency department would ever be misdiagnosed or mistreated." The transparent subtitles in my vision shifted rapidly. Wow, Jen is a masterpiece of a villainess. Look at her lying without blinking. Wait, look at Bennett Shaw's face. Why is he checking his tablet? Hold on. What is happening to the projector screen? Right on cue, the beautiful title slide on the massive auditorium screen suddenly glitched. The presentation vanished, replaced by a stark white system window. It was a live, automated data security report from the hospital's main server. Bold red letters flashed for the entire audience to see. Critical warning, proprietary data breach detected. Source file, cardio_neuro_emergency_core_pathway, IP intellectual property. Author/creator, Dr. Audrey Veil. Unauthorized export action, copied via external USB drive at 8:14 a.m. User account responsible, Dr. Jen Blake, credential ID, JB 9942. The applause died instantly. The auditorium became so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Jen's smile froze. She stared at the giant screen behind her, her face draining of all color until she looked like a ghost. What is this? Wendy stammered into the microphone, frantically gesturing to the tech booth. "Turn that off. Reset the system." But the tech booth couldn't turn it off. I had anchored the script to the hospital's central compliance firewall. It wouldn't close until an administrator manually entered an override code. Before Wendy could cause any more confusion, a deep, commanding voice cut through the awkward silence. "There's no need to turn it off." Bennett Shaw stood up from his front row seat. He didn't look at the stage. Instead, he looked down at his own tablet, which was syncing with the hospital's network logs. He turned his head, his sharp gaze sweeping across the auditorium until his eyes locked onto me, standing calmly at the exit doors. "Mr. Shaw," Jen cried out, her voice cracking as she rushed to the edge of the stage. "This is a mistake. A glitch. Audrey Veil is trying to frame me because she was suspended last night for malpractice. She's jealous." "Malpractice?" Mrs. Shaw stood up next to her son, her voice clear and strong. She looked up at Jen with utter disdain. "Last night, this young woman told my bodyguards to put me in an arm lock. She claimed I was a violent lunatic. It was Dr. Audrey Veil who recognized my condition, gave me glucose, and saved my life." Mrs. Shaw turned to her son. "Bennett, that is the doctor I told you about. The one who actually cares about her patients." Bennett nodded slowly. He stepped into the aisle, his bodyguards instantly clearing a path for him as he walked directly toward the back of the auditorium, toward me. The floating comments were losing their minds. "Oh my God. Plot twist of a century." Jen literally admitted on stage that the project took 5 years of work, but the system log proves Audrey created it. Bennett Shaw is walking toward Audrey. "The script is totally broken, Dr. Veil," Bennett said, stopping a polite distance away from me. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes held a deep sense of respect. "My mother told me what happened last night, and my tech team has just verified that the database Dr. Blake attempted to present is fully encrypted under your digital signature. It seems this hospital has a severe problem with recognizing talent." Wendy Collins rushed down the aisle, her face flushed with panic. "Mr. Shaw, please understand, this is an internal administrative matter. Audrey Veil was suspended because she destroyed a $600,000 piece of life-saving equipment last night." "Is that so?" I asked, finally stepping forward. I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen. "Head Nurse Collins, You seem to forget that the emergency lobby is equipped with 4K panoramic security cameras. Since I am a martial artist, I am very aware of blind spots and very aware that the new defibrillator was fully within the camera's field of view. I turned the screen to show Bennett Shaw and the surrounding board members. The crystal-clear video played smoothly. It showed Jen intentionally tripping herself, throwing her body sideways to smash the machine, and then putting on her tearful performance. It also captured the exact moment Wendy Collins gave me that disgusted look, refusing to hear a single word from Aaron or the other bodyguards. The hospital director, who had been sitting in the front row, marched over, his face purple with rage. "Wendy, what is the meaning of this?" "Director, I was just trying to protect the department's reputation." Wendy stuttered, backing away. "You are fired, effective immediately," the director roared. "And an official report will be sent to the medical board regarding your abuse of authority." Jen stumbled backward on the stage, dropping the glass trophy. It shattered into pieces on the wooden floor, mirroring the exact sound of the defibrillator from the night before. "Audrey, please," Jen begged, tears streaming down her face, real tears this time, born of pure terror. "We're sisters, remember? I did it for us. I was going to help you." "You wanted my future, Jen," I said calmly, looking up at her. "But you forgot that you never had the capacity to carry it." The floating comments drifted by, almost pitying her. "It's over for Jen. Theft of intellectual property, filing a false police report, property damage. She's going to be paying off that $600,000 defibrillator for the rest of her life. Medical license? Revoked permanently. Career? Buried." 2 weeks later, the chaos had completely settled. Jen Blake and Wendy Collins were facing a massive civil lawsuit from both the hospital and the Shaw Corporation for fraud and defamation. Jen's medical career was permanently over before it had even truly begun. As for me, I was sitting in a high-rise office overlooking the city skyline, a steaming cup of tea in front of me. "The validation keys you provided have integrated perfectly with our medical AI systems," Bennett Shaw said, walking into the room and handing me a sleek, leather-bound folder. "The cardio-neuro emergency core pathway is already saving lives in 3 of our pilot hospitals." I opened the folder. It was a contract appointing me as the Chief Medical Officer and Director of Clinical Research at the Shaw Medical Technology Group, complete with a state-of-the-art research facility and a salary that made my old hospital paycheck look like pocket change. "You deserve this, Audrey," Bennett said, his voice softening with genuine warmth. "People with your level of talent and integrity are rare. I'm glad my mother stumbled into your bar that night." "So am I smiled, signing my name neatly at the bottom of the document. As I closed the folder, I noticed the floating transparent subtitles in the corner of my vision beginning to fade. The lines of text grew faint, losing their glowing edge, as if their purpose had finally been fulfilled. One last comment drifted across the air before disappearing completely. "She didn't just survive the villainous plotline, she built her own empire. Masterclass execution, Dr. Vale." I looked out the window at the bright, open sky. For the first time in my life, the path ahead of me wasn't dictated by anyone else's script. It was entirely my own. Every story has a script, a predictable sequence of actions, betrayals, and expected outcomes. In another life, I would have allowed my impulses and my trust in a false friend to dictate my ruin. I would have used my fists instead of my mind, walking straight into a trap carefully laid by jealousy. But true strength isn't about how hard you can strike. It's about knowing when to step back and let your enemies trip over their own shadows. By saving a patient, protecting my integrity, and letting the truth unfold through undeniable data, I didn't just rewrite my destiny. I completely destroyed the game. Jen Blake sought a shortcut to the top by stealing the years I poured into my work, only to find that stolen wealth is a heavy burden that eventually crushes the thief. As I step into my new role, I carry no bitterness, only a profound truth. The best revenge isn't a knockout punch.